Everyone, this is Andrei Gurgel. He is an independent designer with over 20 years of experience creating digital products. In 2016, he created the XLab platform to establish dialogues on design with people around the world. He's also a personal reference to me, so I'm very excited to hear his talk. So welcome, Andrei. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Camila. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on where you are at the moment. I'm Andrei Gurgel, as Camila said. I'm a Brazilian designer, and today I will talk about design, right? Especially a participatory or collaborative design. I will talk about an approach in which we can think of design towards social innovation to build products and services that consider the actors involved. Let me change here. And to do that, I'm going to talk about Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire, for me, it's a great reference in life. And recently, we started to study Freddie through the design lens. And today I'm going to talk about this, what I've learned from him, right? And let's move on. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here because, as I said, it's important to consider the actors involved, right? This means, to me, a greater chance to success, considering those people who will be affected by the solution is key, right? And more than that, a design focused on generating global benefits and not just focus on a specific type of user. We have seen approaches that bring benefits to a group, a certain group, but that can generate more oppression to the others who were not considered in the project. It's a serious situation. Or even worse, right? They are sometimes considered, but to be oppressed in the process. Yes, I think oppression seems to be sometimes part of the design process. And we should protect the design from this, let's say, bad appropriation, right? We need to overcome this established logic of centralization and oppression and pay attention to the consequences that our design decisions may be causing to groups even beyond our projects, people who are not users but who are affected by our design solutions. And how about the ecosystem, right? Nature and other animals. Have we considered this in our project? It's rare, right? So I think it's time to change this situation. And I want to start by demonstrating the points of theoretical unity of the approach described by the Brazilian educator and philosopher Paulo Freire and the participatory design. I'm glad to be here at this conference to teach and learning from Africa and all of you. I think Africa is our roots, right? And it's also our present and our future, consequently. I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me for this conference. Congratulations to Gideon and the whole crew, including the volunteers, for making this event possible. It's amazing. So let's move on, diving into the past. This is very important for me, but seeking my design roots has been an important move for me, as I said. It's an unchangeable movement, I think, at this point. Because through looking at the past and history, I realized that design thinking was present here, where I have lived for a long time, right here in the northeast of Brazil. But I was not aware of that previously. You see, maybe I was taught to think that it was not design. Look at this curious object. It's a mug, right? It's a very curious object because it was designed by the popular knowledge. In the past, just bringing these context, in the past, and even today, people store water at home in large clay jars, especially in the poorest and driest regions of northeast Brazil, where I live. This mug was made so that it only served to collect water from the main storage container. Sure, the mug could not be brought to the mouth, right? Which could contaminate all the stored water. This is a solution to a very specific problem based on a very particular context, right? On a knowledge lived in practice. This is product design, I realized. Probably something similar is used somewhere else. Maybe you know about this. Design roots and Freddie. In this journey of understanding my roots, I was looked to find a small Brazilian researcher group. They came from different parts of the country and willing to understand the Freudian thought from a design perspective. And for this movement and moment, I want to thank the fellow researchers Bibiana Serpa, Freddie Van Amistel, Guilherme Gonzato, Marco Mazarotto, all Brazilians, and so many others who have joined us in this debate. In Brazil, it's exciting, a lot of things to discover. And who knows, from this moment on, many other designers around the world also want to join us. You are very, very welcome. Wow, Paulo Freire needs no introduction. This year is extraordinary because we are celebrating his 100th anniversary. Paulo Freire was born in 1921 in the city of Recife, in the northeast of Brazil. And he believed that education was an essential tool for the transformation of society. Freire was radically against the traditional view of knowledge transfer education, which sees the teacher as one who has the wisdom, the specialist, the authority of knowledge. On the other hand, the student is the one who passively receives the knowledge like a deposit, right? He called this concept banking education. The teaching method that Paulo Freire proposed was participatory, collaborative, and dialogical because teachers and students share through conversation. And the learning was based on the students' real daily needs. The students' world and reality mediated this conversation. According to Freud, it was necessary to know the student's experience and know where it came from. This already starts to sound like design, don't you think? And all the education proposed by Freire went through dialogue and exchange without hierarchies. You see, teachers and students were seen as equals. The New North. Okay, like Paulo Freire, I was born here in the northeast of Brazil, in a city called Natal, in the state of Rio Grande do Norte. And it was precisely here and another smaller town called Angicos, 180 kilometers away from where I am right now, that Paulo Freire carried out the experiments on his method in the early 1960s that later gave rise to his world famous book, right? The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. This is it. And it is in this book that Paulo Freire proposes this method of dialectical literacy, He has always advocate dialogue with people, simple people, right? Not only as a method, but as a way of being truly democratic. And this aspect of democracy in the Paulo Freire method was a fundamental component for Scandinavian participatory design approaches, which we will discuss soon. Before that, it is essential to say that Paulo Freire's method touched much more than reading and writing, right? It awakened these people to the world. They started to read the world in a different way, a new way, not perceived by these people until then, right? They finally recognized themselves as active people in this world. Freddie was preparing to take this method to Brazil, right, when the military coup in 1964 interrupted his plans. Brazil was entering in a dictatorship. The day after, you see, the day after the military coup, Paulo Freire's schools were closed in Angicos and Natal. Many students burned and buried their materials for fear, right, of harassment by officers. And Freddie himself was arrested and forced to leave the country, only returning to Brazil in the early 1980s. It's important information. But today, Freddie is one of the most cited researchers in universities all around the world. And I think we are here debating Freddie because of his legacy, which is a huge legacy. Uh, the Freudian lens on design. It is essential to say, it is crucial to say that once a lens of design is applied to Freire's legacy and the process of looking for theoretical similarities between his teaching and design has started, they will gain a path of no return. With no exaggeration, I mean, when you read Freire, I have the book here, each paragraph, you see, each thought expressed by him is a universe that can be discussed through the point of view of participatory design and social innovation. We are exploring this treasure only now. What I bring here is just a small sample, and there is certainly room for many debates involving Paulo Freire and participatory design. Participatory design. We know that participatory design approach to design emerged in the early 1970s in Scandinavia. There was, at that moment, a challenging context for them. There were important political changes in the world and the introduction of computers in their workspace. In that specific context, an attempt was made to broaden the democratic dialogue between the industrial union groups and their works and these industries' direction, right? It was necessary to find a model in which technology would be incorporated into work environments and that job could be kept, right? It's important. So it's important democracy and dialogue in this context. And these were two keywords of that context. And Paulo Freire was a great inspiration for them at that time. And who explains these to us now is the Professor Pelle M. From the University of Malmo, Sweden, one of the most important names in the Scandinavian participatory design approach. I have the audio here. Let me see if I can launch it.
Another very important source in building this up was the Brazilian liberation theologist Paulo Freire.
Pellen, Professor Pellen is a huge reference for me. He was speaking to a group of students in Sweden in this occasion, and expressed this feeling about Freire in this context. Professor Pelem saw, acted, and lived this moment directly, right? Articulating participatory design methods that later expanded to design of technology and interactive artifacts through participation and collaboration, like the Utopia project in the early 1980s. I have some images here. This is Professor Pelen. This project practically redefined the way printed newspapers were made at the time. They created, through participation, collaboration, not only a model that underpinned the software we use today, you see, from Adobe and popular softwares out there, but specific tools like different types of mouses and controls. It's product and interaction design. They made a powerful tool for workers and not a substitute for human talent and sensitivity, right? It's important to highlight this characteristic. Scandinavia is still a great reference in participatory design today, but this origin had a Brazilian participation with Paulo Freire, right? And even today, Freire inspires Scandinavian participatory approaches. This is one quote, another quote from the Professor Pelen, discussing about interaction design, right? The same strategy of including people and dialogue and participation. So my question is, why do we explore Paulo Freire this little, right? To say nothing in design schools in Brazil, right? It's a tricky question. Okay, let's move on. Okay, as I said, it seems that we have a lot to learn and be inspired by Freire about the practice of participatory design in Brazil itself and around the world, right? Among the most relevant points for the participatory design approaches in Freire's work is the dialogue importance, right? Let's discuss about it. Dialogue importance. Look at that. Collaboration as a characteristic of dialogical action, that it cannot happen except between subjects, even though they have a different levels of function, therefore of responsibility, can only be realized realized in communication. Dialogue, which is also always communication, fuses collaboration. And this one, oh yeah, this is the right quote. And dialogue, which is also communication, underlines collaboration, right? It's so important. And Freire also said that dialogue is the encounter between people, right? Mediated by the world, to name the world. It's a beautiful concept. This constant dialogue as a word put into practice is where Freire's praxis concept comes from. Praxis is another important concept for Freire and for participatory design itself. Freire often indirectly defines the concept of praxis through application in context, and I have this phrase here in Portuguese: para ser, tem que estar sendo. Sorry, guys, I need to read it in Portuguese because it sounds beautifully. You see, in Portuguese, it's amazing. It's something like to be, it has to be, right? In translating to English. And here, the world, like human behavior, meaningful to the world, does not just designate things, it transforms them. It's not just thinking, it's praxis. So the praxis is the concept of Freire, in Freire concept, is the practice of constant movement, right? Constant movement, which means that the activities allow the teacher to conduct the teaching and learning process based on the theory, but allowing the theory to be experienced in practice, and increasingly bringing elements of practice, you see, reinforcing and improving the theory. That's the strategy. And can you see any similarity between this concept and design? Design is also this iterative process, right? And evolutionary. Design is also a praxis in this sense, we can say. And practice requires, let's move on, participation. This is an important concept. Another phrase here from Paulo Freire. I love this one. Nobody educates anyone. Nobody educates themselves. Men educate themselves, mediated by the world. Observe that Freire uses a lot men, but it's important to understand the context in the 70s. Of course, he was trying to describe humans, right? People, but it's a language problem in Freire text that today we can understand and study itself. And but participation is fundamental, right? It's a fundamental component on the Freire process. The people who were part of the literacy process, together with specialists, acted since the beginning, searching for they call generated themes, which are elements of this people's reality, you see, who were brought into the dialogical debate. Since the survey, you see, they run a survey in the beginning. So since this moment, to capture these themes, also during the analysis and later the discussion about then in the classroom, there was always the involvement of people. It's really participatory since the beginning. Participation at every moment. This is a fundamental concept for Freire and also for the participatory design approaches, right? But also humility. It's so important for Freire, this concept. Humility bases many things on Freire's approaches, on the participation of specialists' research together with people, and creating a dialogue between teachers and students. The teacher becomes an apprentice and the student becomes a teacher, right? Hierarchies disappear with Freire. Humility is also a fundamental component, as I said, of this process. Freire said there is no dialogue if there is no humility. The pronunciation of the world, which which men constantly recreated, cannot be an arrogant act, right? This is a powerful phrase from Freire. For Freire, humility was a fundamental factor as well in creating dialogue, because another phrase here, self-reliance is incompatible with dialogue. Arrogance does not allow itself to learn, right? It only has something to teach it in its arrogance. That's the concept. And the concept of banking education. Oops, I just have 5 minutes. Oh my God. Let's move on. In the arrogance of forcing what we know, our practice, what originates the banking conception of education pointed out by Freire. Banking education is the opposite of what Freire proposes. Another phrase here, I can't read it because of the time, but basically in the banking concept of teaching, the educator is the one who teaches, the student the one who learns. That's the relationship between them, right? And for Freire, It's a, in this sense, the educator would do this through knowledge deposits, regardless the person's previous knowledge. I want to jump here a little bit because I want to reinforce the design point of view. Let me see if I can jump here, my presentation, to another point. Let me see. Okay, let's talk about user-centered design. Instead of that, maybe Freddie is proposing this systemic design view, right? Because it's a different point of view. It's a broader concept, right? Instead of just users. I talked a little about users a lot in my social media, and how it creates a feeling of superpowers for designers who, in their arrogance, design solutions for people and forcing them to adopt them in a process that we could call banking design, right? It's really similar. Do you think it happens, or am I overreacting? It's really common to see. I think we should go further the concept of users and design systemically, you see, for users, but also for non-users, thinking about the nature, the other animals, creating business and sustainable business, right? It's really, really important. Another big phrase from Freddie here, I need to jump. Freddie had a comprehensive view of his work. He did not focus on people to extract, you see, that knowledge or check it that the suggestion resonated with people. No, it's different. I mean, it's participation, it's dialogue, it's learning together. It's a completely different concept. Another important concept, I would say, let me jump here inside this, the educator and educating concept. It's really, really important. Because have you ever found yourself repeating the mantra that user is not designer and design is not user, right? Freddie called the teacher an educator student and the student an educator student. So it's a different concept, right? For him, that it was mutual learning path with humility in love. It's a beautiful concept that Freddie brought for us to design. And I would like to ask, do you think that designers can save the world? That's a tricky question, right? Some people say that design cannot save the world. But Freire believed that he did also went far beyond teaching people, right? And to write or read. He felt that people needed to read the world, understanding the importance of their work and act in practice to make it a better place. And I like, and like Freire, I think we can claim to create a better world as a designers as well. You see, through communication, through dialogue, including people, considering the solutions systematically, not focus on something. Design can contribute to a better world. Because when we make a product or a service that makes people's lives a little better, we are already building a better world with less oppression to deal. That's that's the main message for today. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about Paulo Freire, who is, this incredible person. I really think we have a lot to learn from him. So, yes, thank you, everyone.